Why not? Why not? Hockey Guy Hall of Fame has not had an induction in a few weeks, so why not throw another one in? And I'm going to throw in Ryan Walter. And yes, part of this is because of the fact that Ryan Walter is simply a great guy, and I've had direct communications with him, and he's fantastic. But another part of it is, with the THG Hall of Fame, it's not necessarily about the superstar players who, why aren't they in the Hall of Fame? It's about guys who are just really great guys and players that were my favorites when they played. Now, with Ryan Walter, it's easy to forget. 1978, he's a number 2 overall pick. And the expectation is this could be a big star player. So for the Washington Capitals, a team that's already still going through the Greg Jolly problem, and the fact that he was largely a flop as a number 1 overall pick, this has to hit. So he comes into the league in 78-79, so straight out of the draft, 69 games played, 28 goals, 28 assists, 56 points. Pretty decent first-year totals from a player who was just straight out of the draft. So 79-80, he plays 80 games, 24 goals, 42 assists, 66 points. Now again, good totals. Maybe not what the Capitals were envisioning when they drafted him, but pretty decent totals. Year 3, 80 games played, 24 goals, 44 assists, 68 points. So very, very consistent totals for Ryan Walter. Year 4, his final year in Washington, 78 games played, 38 goals, 49 assists, 87 points. That's a career high. Career high right there. And he hits the career high in goals, assists, and points. Does it all in the same season. Does very, very well for a Washington team that's still trying to shake off the fact that they haven't been really a winning team since their inception in the league. And like their first year is among my totally awful seasons, which was an 8-win season, and it was just miserable overall. And that's a playlist I need to get back into, is totally horrible, like totally awful seasons, because right now it feels like we're going through it collectively as a league. So then he's traded September 9th of 1982. So just as we're getting ready for training camp, he's traded to the Montreal Canadiens with Rick Green. Rick Green was also a highly sought prospect for the Washington Capitals, who I guess the Capitals decided, all right, well, we're going to have to improve things overall, and we're going to have to move guys we'd rather keep to do it. So I believe it was David Poile that made this deal, and Rod Langway, Brian Engblom, Doug Jarvis, and Craig Laughlin go the other way. So that is 4 players being traded for 2. So 4 players go to Washington in a deal that Washington wins. But the interesting part is that while Rod Langway goes on to have tremendous success with the Washington Capitals, and Engblom, Jarvis, Laughlin, this is really, really a good deal for Washington. Ryan Walter does have success in Montreal, as does Rick Green. Now, his first year in Montreal, 80 games played, 29 goals, 46 assists, 75 points for Ryan Walter, and he plays in the All-Star game. He also, for the first time in his career, plays in the playoffs. 3 games, no points for the Montreal Canadiens that year, but he finally gets to play in the playoffs in his 5th season. 83-84. 73 games, 20 goals, 29 assists, 49 points. 15 games in the playoffs, 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points. Walter kind of reinvents himself as his career goes along. He goes from highly thought of prospect, maybe he's going to be a 90, 100-point player. Nope. He starts becoming better defensively, and he fits more into the support role and the primary role, and he does it well. 84-85, 72 games, 19 goals, 19 assists, 38 points. And in the playoffs, 12 games, 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points. Pretty decent points per game in the playoffs that year. Now, 85-86, it's the best of times and the worst of times for Ryan Walter. 69 games played, 15 goals, 24 assists, 39 points. His points per game are higher than the season before, but in the playoffs, he only plays 5 games due to injury. But they win the Stanley Cup, so he still gets a Stanley Cup ring out of it. And it's the Stanley Cup championship he gets. He did play in the finals against Calgary, and he assisted on a pretty important goal during one of those games as well. So Ryan Walter, pretty big deal for the Montreal Canadiens overall, and that 1 point isn't not without consequence. But again, you look at that 5 games and 1 point. So he's going to be looking to play a bigger role. And he does the following season. 76 games, 23 goals, 23 assists, 46 points. So his scoring is up the following season. And in the playoffs, 17 games played, 7 goals, 12 assists, 19 points. More than a point a game in the playoffs the following year. But Montreal does not go back to the Stanley Cup Finals. So 87-88 rolls around, only 61 games played due to injury, 13 goals, 23 assists, 36 points. In the playoffs, 11 games played, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. 88-89 rolls around, and it's back to the Stanley Cup final for the Montreal Canadiens with Ryan Walter again playing a support role. 78 games played during the regular season, 14 goals, 17 assists, 31 points. And in the playoffs, 21 games played, 3 goals, 5 assists, 8 points. So again, his points per game in the playoffs, a little bit lower, but he has some key goals in there. And, he is a key player for the team going into 89-90, where his scoring drops. 70 games, 8 goals, 16 assists, 24 points, and in the playoffs, 11 games played and 2 assists. And definitely a drop in his scoring, drop in his prominence, and this is kind of where, for Montreal, his career is winding down, because in the following season, on October 13th, 1990, he suffers a wrist injury against the Hartford Whalers, which knocks him out for most of the season. He plays 25 games and gets 1 assist. So quietly, 91-92 season, the Vancouver Canucks come calling. The Vancouver Canucks, who just got guys like Ronning, Courtnall, Momesso, and everything's looking pretty darn good for Vancouver that they're going to get things going. But that fourth line center spot is handed to Ryan Walter, who signs as a free agent. That first year, 67 games played, 6 goals, 11 assists, 17 points. In the playoffs, 13 games played, and he gets 3 assists. It's not all about points, and Walter's time in Vancouver proves that. Very popular player. As I said, fourth line center. Provided stability, leadership, and experience. And it was pretty remarkable watching that 91-92 Canucks roster. We all talk about 94. They went to the Stanley Cup Finals in 94, and everybody will always love that team for doing that. To me, the best team the Canucks ever had was 91-92. And I mean that. I think that was their best team, and I know the 2010-2011 team and what they did. I thought the 91-92 team, their forwards from top to bottom, their defense from top to bottom, and their goaltending, it was intimidating. It was fantastic to watch. And maybe part of it might be a bias on my part because Vancouver had been and also ran the entire time I'd watched them. They had never had a team above 500, and here was a team in 91-92 with 96 points. And Ryan Walter played a role in that, which would definitely not necessarily be that noticeable with 6 goals and 11 assists in 67 games. Now, the following season, 25 games. He had 3 goals that year and transitions from being a guy who's, an on-ice leader that first year, and you could see that off-ice leadership was there as well, and just his popularity with his teammates. And the best thing about that season was he did reach the 1,000-game mark. So 92-93 is his final year. He leaves the NHL with 1,003 games played, 264 goals, 382 assists for 646 points. Not bad totals overall, and in the playoffs, 113 games played, 16 goals, 35 assists, 51 points. Not numbers to sneeze at. Now, 93-94 through 97-98, so after he's retired here, he works for TSN as a color commentator, and I liked him as a color commentator. From 96-97 through 2001-2002, so there's some overlap there. He worked for as a commentator for the Canucks for their Sportsnet broadcasts. And again, I appreciated his insight, and I think he's a very good speaker. June 17th, 2008, he was named one of the Canucks assistant coaches to Alain Vigneault. In 2010, the Canucks let him go. They've been through a lot of assistant coaches, though I don't put that on Ryan as much as anything else. September 11th, 2010, he was named head coach for the Canadian women's team. They went to the Four Nations Cup, and they won gold. So he's really done kind of sort of everything. 2011 to 2014, he was the president for the Abbotsford Heat, just down the street here. He was president for the Abbotsford Heat. And if Ryan sees this, I apologize that having lived out in Chilliwack at the time, it was really weird to me that the Calgary Flames farm team was in Abbotsford, and just with finances being as they were and everything being as it was, I didn't get to go to Abbotsford Heat games, so I apologize for that. Again, just in case he's watching. Now, what's interesting is there's RyanWalter.com. He does do coaching. He does do leadership seminars. You can book him to speak. And again, I reached out to him when the Brody Hintz tournament was coming up in April, and he said, anything I can do to help you promote this, let me know. and emailed me back right away and said, anything I can do, let me know. And he gave me his cell phone number and said, contact me anytime. And honestly, there are hockey players who tell me, or hockey players who to me, okay, I got to phrase this correctly so it doesn't sound like hockey players are telling me, but there are hockey players that I look at their career, I look at their overall impact on people, and I say, you know what, they've done some real good in this world, and Ryan Walter is one of those guys. I've never heard anybody say a bad word about him. And really, in all honesty, I'm wearing a Montreal jersey because that's where he played a majority of his career. That's where he won a Stanley Cup. But really, I think of him as a Vancouver Canuck there towards the end. He was really, really solid for a 91-92 team that needed that leadership on that fourth line, and he provided it. So, yeah, from number 2 pick in 1978 to an excellent role player, and now he has his own business. And, I would think that he will continue to be a success at whatever he chooses to do, because that's kind of what he does. So welcome to the THG Hall of Fame, Ryan Walter. Again, the THG Hall of Fame is kind of for that, and for players that maybe it's easier to forget if you're older and you didn't watch the hockey back then, or if you were watching the hockey back then but you really didn't think about the guys outside of the big stars, or maybe a player just on the team you cheered for. So if you didn't cheer for the Caps, Canadians, or Vancouver, Walter's an easy guy to sort of say, oh, right, Ryan Walter. Another example from that Canucks team back then was Randy Gregg. Randy Gregg was another one who provided them solid leadership when they needed it. Didn't necessarily play every game, but when Dr. Randy Gregg was out there, it was really kind of fun to watch. And you can say Dr. Randy Gregg because he was a doctor. So, yeah, I think he's still a doctor. Anyways, there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And I will talk to you guys again soon.